So, good morning, Dado.
Good morning.
My guest today is Dado Alonso, who is a former CFO at Berlin Brands Group. But Dado actually had a quite distinguished careers at many multinational organizations over the years, among which Azerion, Booking.com, Amazon, Siemens, CNA. And besides that, Dado also has taken on a couple of roles in important boards, such as the IMA, the International Federation of Accountants, the Women in AI in the Netherlands. And so, Dado, I'm very happy that you are here to talk to me this morning.
Thank you very much, Stefan, for having me here.
So maybe to start off this podcast, could you perhaps walk us a little bit through your career and kind of the journey that made you become a CFO?
Well, first of all, thanks so much, Stefan, for having me here. As I told you, it's a huge honor to be here talking to you today. And thanks so much. So yes, I'm Dado Alonso. I'm CFO from career. I actually come from a small city in the north of Spain, actually a traditional city. I went to Madrid to study, and that's when everything started, right? So I studied there, law and business administration, and right after my studies, I actually, I really wanted to have exposure outside of Spain. So that's what brought me to Siemens, and Siemens brought me to Germany. I was in Germany 13 years, and then afterwards I found some path to come to Amsterdam, actually to Netherlands. So I've been actually working in different companies. I was in Siemens for 8 years. Then I actually was in Amazon. When Amazon was really building the European structure, and I was one of the 61st employees in Amazon Luxembourg. After Amazon, I was working in Booking when it had just been bought by Priceline, and we were actually trying to buy Villas.com and creating the mega company that is today, right? One of the last companies I've been working for has been Berlin Brands Group in the e-commerce space, direct to consumer. I was hired for growth and exit, after the downturn of e-com, especially in Germany. The mandate was more facilitating a leverage buyout. But yes, that's to me. Thanks for having me here.
Yeah, sure. At least when I think of my own students, what happens quite frequently is that they come to me after class and ask me, what do I need to, do in order to become a CFO one day? And then, I always have to think for a moment, because obviously, I'm a professor at a business school, and we teach students kind of the necessary tools and skills and way of reasoning how you can make sound financial decisions. But of course, there's always, a little bit of a disconnect, right, between the things that they learn in theory at the university from, I would say, kind of the practical work of a CFO. So in your experience, maybe we could talk a little bit about what you think are kind of the important skills and abilities that you would need to have in order to be successful as a CFO. And maybe we can later also talk about perhaps some of the, let's say, more rewarding and challenging aspects of being a CFO.
Yeah.
So what do you think about that?
Well, being a CFO is, it's not a profession in a way, it's a journey, right? Yeah. So I don't know anybody that finishes the studies in the university and starts as CFO, right? So coming to CFO, you have different paths, actually. You have the typical business analytics, business partnering path that brings you to business finance, and then decision making and partnering. That is one path. The other path is more towards accounting, using accounting, the typical path, working in a big four, audit company, accounting, then financial controlling, and that would be the path. So in that path, then you need to acquire then the business partnering skills to become the CFO. And then the third path is, you are more in the M&A, investor banking type of industry. And actually you come to CFO because in that particular company, what is required is a person that is able to craft M&A deals, to sell the company, to create the right equity story, and communicate in the right way with investor relations. So typically those are the three typical paths. All of them are right, and it depends on what is your appetite as a student, right? And again, I mean, it's a journey. At the end, when you are CFO, you need to have all skills at a certain level, no matter which was the path that you initially joined and started pursuing. But it's that's, as I said, it's a journey.
So it's a journey. But if I understand correctly, what you mean is a journey that you typically start in a somewhat, more specialized sector. And if your ambition is to make it to the CFO level one day, you need to broaden your skills as you progress throughout your career.
Yes.
Yeah, that's interesting. Now, of course, you have also been, let's say, in the business for quite some time. You have seen different companies, different industries. You have progressed through these different roles over the years. Now, looking back a little bit, maybe to the more beginnings of your career and comparing to today, would you say that, let's say, the challenges and the expectations have changed over the years on what it means and what it needs to be a CFO, or has that remained more or less constant?
Well, I mean, you need to. It's sad to say and recognize, but I mean, years really pile and the years pass, But when I started my career, SAP was in the very beginnings, literally in the very beginnings. Internet had just been invented, a couple of years back. Mobile devices were, the very, very small ones. That's when I started, right? So at that time, finance and the role of a CFO was very much accounting. And it was very much about, the function was very much about making sure that the books were reflecting the business. So it's about translating business into accounting language. And there was very little conversation between the CFO and the CEOs. It was, you typically had in the management meetings, you typically had the CEOs talking about the business and talking to the CEOs and the CFOs talking to the CFO. So it was like literally like two separate, a little bit like two separate worlds, right? That actually has changed very, very much. I mean, from the CFO, what is required now is to be a business partner. What does it mean? It means that as a business partner, you need to understand the business as good and as well as the CEO. You need to be the co-pilot and the advisor for the CEO. And on top of that, it's not only that you are a business partner, but you also bring obviously this second function. It's not only about strategy and strategy execution, right? As CFO, it's also about making sure that you bring the trust and you build the trust to the shareholders and to the investors. So I must say, I mean, the role of the CFO today is one of the most complex, in my opinion, in the business world. A part, of course, of the on top of a part of the CEO, right? But it's really not a normal. It's not as any other executive management or function.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it's not just an extension of, doing controlling work and then at a higher hierarchy level, but it's really a different skill set and a different, much broader role that you have to fill in, because you need to interact and spar with the CEO. You need to be good at investor communication and also understand the financial sides and the financial implications of things.
Yeah, and sometimes also, I mean, it's not only that the role is very broad and it's more and more demanded that you, as a CFO, you need to understand the whole company and how the operations work and everything works, right? But it's also, I mean, sometimes you are the primo inter pares, so you really need to. Unfortunately, in some occasions, especially when the economy or the trading is not favorable to the company, right? The CFO is the one actually that needs to say no to certain budget expenditures, right? Or to say no to certain initiatives, because the resources are not unlimited.
Right.
And you just need to make sure that the strategy is executed as efficiently as possible.
So also you need to make hard decisions and have serious conversations with people.
Yeah, that's frequently also the case.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
But I guess that also makes it a really, I mean, I can imagine a more rewarding and interesting job profile overall. I mean, or if you could choose, I mean, would you prefer to have the role back of the CFO 20 years ago, or is this something, I mean?
No, I mean, to me, I mean, yeah, I'm a CFO, and I'm CFO, I mean, from passionate CFO. I think the finance can really be a force for good. Because we are able to understand the whole business, we are not biased. Our interest is the good of the company, right? Mm-hmm. So it's how can we help the best the mission and the objective and the vision of this company, right? And therefore, it's very rewarding the fact that you can talk to anybody in the company. Mm-hmm. You can understand from the numbers. You can give a different understanding of what operations, what sales, what commercial, what product development is actually looking at, and if given the opportunity, the finance the finance function can really add quite a lot. I mean, you can see. I mean, we are introducing now the ESG. Ratios and objectives, right? And who is the function that actually is holding, the trust to make it happen? Well, finance.
Yeah.
So there's a reputation, and it's not to take it for granted. I mean, we have a certain way of doing things that is unbiased, is not compromised, and it's as accurate as possible, but always looking for the good of the whole, right?
That's a really nice, I think, a nice vision on the finance function, being actually a driver and a force really for positive change within the organization, which also aligns well with, I think, our university's mission as being a force for positive change. So it's nice to see that this can also reflects back into how you see finance, because also I think there are many people who probably see finance as a sort of cold rational discipline that doesn't factor in consequences that the firm takes perhaps for larger society. But I think, as you have just explained, for instance, when we're talking about the field of sustainability or ESG more broadly, right, it is the finance function that can also drive positive change here. And it's nice, I think, so finance can be a driver of positive change, and it also evolves with technology, as you just explained. Now, of course, one of the big technological changes that has happened in the previous couple of years is the rise of artificial intelligence and especially generative AI. So we, of course, also have met a couple of months ago at a conference in Amsterdam when we were both talking about artificial intelligence in finance, more generally speaking. And I know that you're also quite passionate about the field of, artificial intelligence and what it means for the finance function. So can you speak a little bit about how artificial intelligence and maybe also this more recent trend on generative AI will shape the finance function as we move forward? I mean, we all don't, of course, exactly know how things will pan out, but what your perspective or perhaps broader vision is for that?
Yeah, I mean, look, the reality is, the reality is the finance function has been always transformed very, very heavily through technology, right? I mean, first it was finance operations. I still remember people scanning the invoices before they go to the ERP system.
Yeah.
I still remember when we didn't have ERP systems. So finance is used to change and used to transformation through technology. Now, how I think and how I see artificial intelligence and generative AI is as a tool. And I think that's the way I best connect to that, to artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence, I think, that if you combine RPA and you combine machine learning and you combine generative AI, that's where the next transformation in finance will come, right? So there will be several use cases that today are not, are mostly done by our employees, by finance analysts, that will be very, very much helped and supported and augmented by these technologies. Now, does it mean, and the big question mark, right, is this technology going to replace us?
Exactly.
I do not think so. I do not think so, because this technology is not a human being, and they will. So it's very critical to understand how this technology works, right? So if you are thinking about RPAs, RPA is a system, is an automated way is a way to automate processes. So things that we do repetitively will be able to be automated in a much easier way through RPA. Now, machine learning is a tool that is more used for forecasting. So practically it's a mega calculator. So a human being is able to process 3-4 different dimensions of the data. Now with machine learning, you will be able to process many more dimensions and also add many more points of data regarding future trends or past trends and so on, so that the machine will be able to calculate different scenarios in a much faster way. Generative AI is a tool that is actually just prompting or just forecasting which is the next token with the highest probability. So if you actually understand how they work, then you will also come to conclusion that it's not so logical that they will replace the humans working in finance. What will happen is that we will need certainly to work different. We will need to use our brains much more. We will need to use critical thinking. We will need to use creativity and social connection to make sure that we can use the tools in the right way and that we can use the tools asking the right questions. Because that's what, it's like learning how to use a tool. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think there are lots of very interesting things that you just mentioned. So I agree that there are lots of applications potentially within an organization that can be augmented by artificial intelligence. So if we're just thinking about automation, for instance, so I guess invoice scanning aspects, things like that can be further automated away. I'm thinking, for instance, about maybe somewhat more complicated aspects that nowadays still require some manual checking. So if we're thinking about fraud detection algorithms, for instance, I could imagine that those will become better and more sophisticated as the artificial intelligence tools and solutions become better. So hopefully that will need, less manual work from our side. And I think forecasting is probably another very straightforward kind of application of where machine learning can help us, especially in the finance function, making better predictions about how the future will unfold and taking into account more information. I have to say, when I think about the development of artificial intelligence in the future, I hope that it will pan out in a scenario where this will just be an augmentation indeed of our human skills and capabilities, and that we will not, at some point get completely replaced. Yeah. Because I think what you say is correct, that at least in the current scenario, right, large language models, or in general, generative AI solutions that build on the kind of transformer architecture, these token prediction machines, there is no fundamental world model baked into these models. So essentially, their ability to reason isn't really present. I think they're very good at, providing text that sounds very convincing, and that in some sense is kind of the logical conclusion to the question that you ask it, based on, the probability, that kind of the probability distribution of those tokens. And then if you continuously spit it out, this is the answer that you get, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you will get the correct solution. So I think, at least in the present, we probably need to, it's a great tool that can enhance our capabilities, but we still need to be very critical, because these tools still make some mistakes. They can hallucinate, they can provide wrong solutions. But also, if you take a look at the current developments, they are building, I think, or working at least on solutions that can also reason, actually. And then I really wonder whether, this might be just a very disruptive solution that could potentially then replace all of human labor almost in organizations. Aren't you not worried about that?
Look, predictions, prediction is like, we don't have a crystal ball, right? So we don't know what's going to happen. Mm-hmm. So it's impossible to know what's going to happen. With the information that we have today, we can assume certain things and then, draw our own conclusions. For me, these new tools, this new technology, will it fundamentally transform the way we operate? And now I mean the high-skilled employees. Will it transform the way we work today? Definitely, yes. Does it mean will we be replaced? I don't think so. I think, so if I think in terms of finance function, I think the finance analyst will be much, much more focused on analyzing the data, curating the data, understanding data governance, making sure that these models are trained in the right way, making sure that the finance community can interact with these models, asking the right questions, checking for validity, cross-checking, and that the information and the data and the answers that these models are giving are not hallucinations. Mm-hmm. So making sure that the outcomes are really not stolen or are not created from somebody else, right? So there's, for sure, the way we operate will be different, but that doesn't mean that it will disappear.
Yeah.
So I'm on the positive side.
Yeah.
I just think that this is a huge opportunity for finance. It has, destroyed the barrier of entry in accessing data.
Absolutely.
You don't need, in principle, to know how to program to be able to use these tools. True. And it's like democratizing, the use of high-end technology, which up until now was really not so possible, or not in our hands.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I'm, by the way, also an absolute optimist when it comes to AI. I love the technology and the kind of the opportunities it creates. So when we're thinking, for instance, about the finance functions, right? I mean, what you oftentimes see in many finance teams is that a lot of the time that people spend then at the workplace is kind of also bound in routine tasks. Now, at least I think in many companies that's still the case, right? Let's say kind of the lots of these reporting tasks that are repeated that you have to do every month, and people need to spend a lot of time working this through, and then hopefully in the future also this technology will kind of automate away, parts of that work, so that people can indeed spend more of their time on the strategic dimension of the finance function, on learning the business, on business partnering with the relevant functions within the organization. So I think I also agree that there is great potential, and if we, this augmentation path would pan out, I think that would be great. And I also totally agree on the coding aspect, because data analytics, I think, is a skill that is highly sought after in many organizations. And now if there is a lower level access to business analytics tools and solutions, then that's really great. I mean, I personally also use it a lot for coding nowadays. I mean, it's just super nice if you can co-program with an AI solution. I'm easily 10 times faster than what I would be without it. So I think that's just it's just lots of opportunities there.
I see it the same way.
Yeah. However, I mean, obviously, there are some potential risks involved in the use of AI. So do you also, so if we would put our other hat on for a moment, are there certain risks, especially for the finance functions, that you could see that might emerge also with, better and more developments in the field of artificial intelligence?
And of course, as any other new technology, right? So, the ones that we are all, aware of, right, have to do with the quality of the data. Mm-hmm. So, quality of the data, bias in the data, and also in the learning, mechanism. Just imagine the way these tools work, right? So just imagine that, for instance, we train the model to identify a CFO as a male of 45 to 55 years old. Mm-hmm. Okay, so you train the model. And then that model is sold to a recruiting agency that is actually filtering CVs. And only those that are filtered, following certain criteria, get an opportunity to be seen by a human, and then eventually being interviewed for a potential role. So that means if in that scenario, the data would have been correct, the learning method would have been biased, because only men of 45 to 55 would be suitable for being CFOs, or my own CV would have not passed the grid, right? So that is a very easy example to see. Sure. So data quality, bias, ethical issues, right? It's very important that they are very much linked to the usage of data and the learning methods, and also what I mentioned before, right? So the two aspects. The one is, who is the owner of this outcome, right? And in some cases, it's obvious, it's the company that is using the tool. In some other cases, it's just not so obvious because this tool is just repeating what has been generated before. So who is the owner of this new outcome or product that has been created?
Sure.
And finally, of course, hallucinations. So these tools are, I'm talking now about generative AI, not machine learning. Machine learning is a mega calculator, right? But generative AI is like, is there to give you an answer. The machine, the tool, the technology is always gonna give you an answer. The technology is not interested in giving you the right answer. So you need the person and the human being to double check and double click that that answer is the right one.
I agree. I mean, I think what you just described is a problem that's generally, I think, that it is discussed quite a lot in the space at the moment. So if we train these, especially large language models, on the whole corpus of the internet, and then if in the text from the internet certain biases are baked in, then the model will learn these biases and reproduce those biases. And at the same time, I think at least the large research labs, they spend a lot of time and resources in trying to condition these biases out of the model, at least, if you think about Meta or OpenAI. So do you see that, let's say, so I'm just wondering what your perspective on this is, whether in the future, then probably the finance functions in organizations, will they use then these kind of off-the-shelf solutions from the big research labs, and then perhaps fine-tune them further for their use cases? Or do you think that maybe in the future, within organizations, they will start to train their own large language models based on their own set of data? Is this something that you have thoughts about? Or
it's early to predict. It's early to see how the industry will evolve. What you see is a myriad of startups trying to get into or to use Gen AI, ML to focus on a particular, use case and fine tune it using this technology. I think, just considering what has happened also in finance when other technologies came in the picture, right? So I think there will be some exploration now. At one point, we will see consolidation in certain use cases that make sense to have them, kind of to have it, like with a pre-setup, But I really think that the end product needs to use data that belongs to the company, because that is very much confidential information. And you want to learn the tool using your own data.
Yeah, for sure.
So I just think that, that's my personal opinion. Of course, we don't know how it will evolve. But I think that that could be a scenario that is probable.
No, I totally agree. I think the question is, will the company data enter the model, let's say at the training stage, or then later in a fine-tuning stage? So will organizations use an off-the-shelf solution and fine-tune it further, or will they start to build their own models from scratch? And I think I totally agree with what you just said, that there will probably be a consolidation at some point, because if you just look at the enormous amount of data and compute that is required, I think, to build these frontier models, then I can almost not imagine that, there must be just a few key players remain after some time, because I think that just the capital requirements are just so large. So maybe it's a little bit like what cloud computing was a couple of years ago, and now we see that we have Amazon Web Services, and then we have Azure and the Google solution. So basically, also a few key players remain, and maybe that is also what we will see in the field of generative AI. But I'm curious. It's a fascinating field, right? Because so much dynamic right now, so many new startups being founded every week, and identifying indeed these specific use cases. And yeah, I think it's a cool time to be alive. Actually, I'm really happy to kind of live in this timeline, to be able to see what's happening in real time. I haven't been so excited actually for many years. And I'm also, I have to say that, also still from the time when there was no internet, right? I mean, many people cannot imagine it anymore, but I still remember how exciting it was when you could even send a text message from your phone. So, and that feels kind of almost similar nowadays, like with the early days of the internet.
Yeah, absolutely. Because you know it's huge. You know it's going to change things. What I know is that, if something like this is coming, it's better to be one of those that embrace it from the beginning and learn to navigate with it from the very beginning.
Absolutely.
So that's how I tackle this type of challenges.
Because otherwise, I mean, you cannot prevent it anyways. Otherwise it will just wash you away if you don't learn to navigate it.
That's a little bit my perspective as well.
Now, maybe moving away from the technology space, a little bit on the personal reflection side. We already just discussed we've been around for some time. So, and you've had, of course, a very distinguished, special career. That made you kind of the successful person that you are today. Are there any specific, perhaps mentors, people, events that have shaped your life at some point in your career that you could reflect on a little bit? So was there anybody who had a kind of a significant influence on your career path?
I mean, I cannot imagine anybody that makes a career without mentors. I mean, the mentors are those that accompany you. They are those that actually talk well about you when you are not in the room. Are those that see things about you that you don't even know, and that inspire you and put you in situations where actually you are forced to go out of your comfort zone, but help you ultimately to grow. So yes, I'm very fortunate that I have had some mentors in my career. I can talk about Federico de Paz. That was in my early days in Spain. He was my first mentor, and that's when I was working for Siemens. He gave me he was not my boss. He was, another manager, but he gave me the opportunity to join what was called the High Potentials junior group, right, in Siemens. And he gave me the opportunity to apply for this group. That actually opened, a whole opportunities, because that is what ultimately opened the opportunity to me to go to the headquarters in Munich, right? Yeah. So what would have happened with me, or what would have been my career if that wouldn't have happened? Well, who knows? But certainly it would have been different, right?
Yeah.
I remember also Klaus Löslein, also in Siemens time, already in Munich, when and that was actually, he actually helped me or pushed me to get or to be the project manager of building a big database for the mobile devices division, and that gave me the opportunity to connect with accounting, with many other functions in the organization, but also to have this exposure towards the top management. To have the first meetings where you need to present and to expose something and so on. So I think having mentors is very important. It's important to help you grow, but also to give you the exposure and the visibility, so that others can think about you also as potential candidates for this role or for the other role. So yes, I'm very grateful to them, and
I think you also now have kind of ventured into new roles where you are kind of becoming a mentor yourself, right? So we just, before recording this podcast, we discussed that you recently joined a number of boards, among which, for instance, there's one board that's, I think, focused specifically on women in AI. Could you, and I guess that involves a certain degree of mentorship as well. So what do you think makes a good, what does it take to be a good mentor, and how is, for instance, this initiative for women in AI, why is that important to you, and what is it that you do there specifically?
So let me break it into, right? So let me focus on women in AI. Women in AI is very close to my heart, because it combines two things, right? It combines AI and technology and what's hyped today with something that is very dear to me, which is the women and the diversity situation, right? So that's from a personal and mission, let's say, point of view. It's just ideal for me. Now, what I like about women in AI is this is a foundation that is actually, whose mission is actually to bring more visibility towards the girls and the women of the new technology, and in particular the AI, right? So it has like different fields. One field is focused on girls that are still studying, so that they get more familiar with artificial intelligence, and then in this initiative we create a community, we go to the schools, we facilitate learning and training opportunities. Then there's another field which is more focused on women that are actually building their own companies. They are entrepreneurs, and why not using technology to do that, right? So we try to give them exposure to find also investors, right? So that's the other field. And then what I like about it is there is a community of people that actually are working on a voluntary basis. And you cannot imagine how many people are really willing to contribute and to give back. And that gives also, me personally, I get a lot of energy from it.
Yeah, that's great.
So it's really
it sounds like a really
exciting.
good initiative. Yeah. Now, I think what has already become clear in this conversation that you're a very busy person, right? And you like to be busy.
Yes.
And you don't like to be bored. So I can imagine also, life sometimes becomes stressful. How do you manage work-life balance? I mean, that's also, of course, another topic that I think currently, is discussed from multiple angles. I think it's an important one. Are there specific, strategies that you could share, or just maybe explain how you manage the balance between work and private things?
I mean, that's work. Private and work balance. That's always difficult. I can share how I do it. But that is perhaps not a recipe for everyone. Okay, so I think for me, discipline is important, and that is what I think what helps holding the house, from falling apart. Meaning my structure, my balance, right?
Yeah.
So that means I follow my calendar. So if the first thing I do is I look at the big events, especially those that relate to my son, and my son's school and the events and so on. And I really block them in my calendar. And then for me also, like, the weekends are sacred, right? I work hard, I work focused on my executive role when I'm during the week, in the weekdays. And the weekend is really sacred. That's where I charge energy with my family, and where I'm focused on my family.
Yeah.
Okay, so for me that distinction is very strict, and yes, there is an exception. Then everybody can accept an exception, but otherwise, that's something that I tend to be very strict about.
Yeah.
Then, my job is stressing. Is quite frequently stressing, and actually, like 5 years ago, I discovered kickboxing.
Oh, okay.
So, and I love it. I really like it.
That's interesting. I remember the last conversation of this podcast I had with Michel almost 1 year ago. I think I asked him a similar question, how he winds down, and he also said that he's boxing in his free time. So that seems to be a thing.
Yeah, so I really loved kickboxing. It keeps me sharp. It from a conditioning point of view is very complete, because you move the whole body, but also on those situations where you are really full of stress, it helps you liberate
to discharge.
Yes, and those days where actually I'm practicing, and and my teacher says, today you are punching better, you are more focused, and I'm like, actually, I'm so pissed, or I have something in my mind that I need to, and those days you are really more, kind of more focused on liberating that stress. So yes, I mean, for me, kickboxing is almost, medicinal. Medicinal, so it's quite, important for me. And then, I mean, how do I balance? I mean, if I have to make important decisions, I sleep over one night at least. I take my time to pull the triggers.
Yeah. So setting clear, if I summarize, setting clear boundaries, prioritizing family events, and punching a couple of sandbags.
Yes, exactly.
That's really nice. So, and that seems to be a pattern. There. That's interesting. Actually, I maybe someone should do a study on this, whether there is an empirical correlation between perhaps successful executives and martial arts training. That might be an interesting subject for a study. Almost, I have to think about that. Now, I also always encourage my students to actually watch these podcasts that I record, because I think there's a lot of valuable lessons to be learned there. Now, if you could, give some guidance, let's say, to the new generation of finance professionals, so the young bachelor, master students that are interested in finance and accounting. What do you think, do you have some recommendations for what they should focus on, which skills to learn, or maybe what to do with their career if they want to, achieve something meaningful in this domain?
Yeah, I mean, that's, it's difficult to say, because every person has a different path, and every person is a white canvas, right? What I can say is there's no right or wrong path. And what I can advise, or my advice to those that want, to progress in their career, is think about it as a marathon, not a sprint, right? There are things that happen for a reason, and it's about the journey as well, right? And then what I would advise is there's no career that has been made without hard work.
Mm-hmm.
So be prepared to work hard. Be prepared to be bold and to speak up what you want and what you don't want. And stay positive, especially in finance, where you are forced to explain why the glass is half empty instead of explaining why it is half full. Just staying positive, and that brings you sometimes much farther and faster than the mere facts.
Oh, that's, I think, a really, really nice conclusion. So, Dado, thank you very much for making the time today to talk to me. It was a great pleasure.
Thank you, Stefan, for having me here.